Oh my god. This might just be one of the biggest twists I've seen in anime in a while. I never would have thought DanMachi had it in it, but what they just revealed to us was absolutely insane. It's peak fantasy capitalizing on 4 methodical seasons of buildup. Now, I know there might be some confusion behind how it all comes together, but this video will focus specifically on that. I'll explain the connection between Syr, Freya, and Horn, the bet made to determine each of their fates, then the unexpected results at the end of it. There were a few missing pieces the anime didn't really show us. Obviously, if you haven't watched up to episode 4 though, then you should watch that, then come back. If you have, then let's talk about how Syr was Horn, then Freya, and doesn't exist at all anymore. Very quickly before we get started though, with the Overlord movie right around the corner, I've decided to re-release the Succube shirts for 2 weeks only. These aren't the same Succube shirts I've sold before though, but rather a more high quality version on par with the ones I've released with Mugen. So the hoodie is by far one of the comfiest that I own, and the shirts are a thick 100% cotton with lots of durability. The design is also applied in a way to ensure it'll never fade, so if you're looking for the best quality version of the Succube design there is, this would definitely be it. You can get yours now by visiting succube.shop, and we'll be sure to get it to you before the holiday season. But anyway, to start things off from the very beginning, everything began with her. A poor young girl so content with life that she would rather stop living than spend another second in this ragged body of hers. It was right as she was about to let go for good that a beautiful existence she didn't even know was possible would step in to offer her everything. Her question was posed as if to find amusement, but the response she got was far more amusing than she could have ever imagined. Where people before would always answer with love and fealty, never before had this goddess received a request so selfishly arrogant. It was an interesting plea that ultimately led to a trading of fates. In exchange for the young girl's true name of Syr, Freya would bestow her with the divine name Horn. It was a deal that solidified her fate the moment it was made, but at the very least unshackled her from the frozen darkness she'd only known before. Where she had only lived as a poor, unkempt child, she would now be reborn as a goddess. So it's from this we know Horn's original name was Syr, and in exchange for a better life, she had given it up to Freya. Part of this better life included literally becoming Freya, which was a transformation only possible via the divine sorcery Freya Syr. It's once this spell was active that Horn would be able to masquerade as the one and only goddess, while Freya herself could spend her days as Syr. So, every time we've seen Syr ourselves in the anime, it's always been Freya living her life as a mortal. There is no real Syr apart from the instances when Freya or Horn are being her. The key thing to know about this though is that the spell shared all of Freya's emotions with Horn, but it never shared any of hers back. No. The connection was a one-way street in which only Horn would experience everything. This made her a goddess through and through, since aside from being unable to use Arcanum, everything down to her very feelings were identical to Freya. It would honestly be no exaggeration to call her the goddess's daughter. What went to ruin this self-made paradise though was the insatiable affection Freya began to let overwhelm her. Because Horn and Freya were connected on an emotional level, Horn knew just how bewitching such feelings were. Every time she would masquerade as Freya, she would sense this part of her goddess that wanted to stop being a goddess. This divine heavenly ruler who mortals couldn't even comprehend was now trying to demean herself in a way that no god ever should. So to think Freya would want to become a mere girl just like how she was, well, that was something Horn knew that she could never let happen. It's for this reason she felt she had no choice but to plot Bel's assassination. If she was gonna ensure her goddess remained a goddess, then Bel needed to be removed from her life completely. The thing is, killing him wasn't as easy as strangling him in his sleep. As he continued to grow day after day, even if she did somehow get a proper chance alone with him, Bel was too strong to fight alone. There was no chance she'd be able to gather help either, since despite everyone in the Familia being jealous of him, none had ever considered actually trying to murder him. Horn was by herself when it came to conspiring about such. The day such plans turned into veritable action was the day Freya ordered her to deliver the invitation. You see, after coming face to face with the rabbit stealing her goddess away, an unstable swirl of emotions nearly overwhelmed her. She was desperately resisting the urge to kill him right there and then, all while fighting against this intense love towards him that wasn't even hers. Because of that deeply shared connection with her goddess, this brief glimpse into what it was Freya was so invested in showed her just how oppressive such compelling emotions were. Her body and spirit were ravaged by feelings of affection for him, proving right there why she needed to act. Now, it didn't matter how intense Horn's false love for Belle was, because at the end of the day, her loyalty was unwavering. Emotions were meaningless in the face of faith, and it was for that reason Horn knew she needed to free Freya from such emotions too. If her life was the cost to cleanse Freya of what can only be called corruption, then that was a price she was more than willing to pay. This brings us to Horn's proposition to Freya, which, while on the surface seemed like a proclamation of love, was actually a facade intended to make Freya think it was. With the request as shameless and arrogant as the one she made when they first met, Horn used her shared feelings with Freya as a cover to hide her true intentions. She used the excuse of loving Belle because of Freya's heart as a means to set up a situation where she could try and murder him. Of course, Horn believed she was tricking Freya into thinking this was just a game to win Belle over, but in the end it seems like Freya knew more than she was letting on here. Before we get into that though, the whole proposal was something very out of character for Horn. She rarely ever took the form of Syr, and the fact she was confessing her true feelings now was certainly surprising due to how unexpected they were. Nevertheless, regardless of how true or false her feelings towards Belle was, for Horn this was all with the intent to kill. Freya would have her day first trying to win Belle over, while Horn would get hers after trying to do the same. It was the only way to set up an opportunity where she could possibly kill him, one uninterrupted by anyone else. Such a window would be very narrow though, so if she was gonna maximize the amount of time to make it happen, then plans needed to be set up beforehand. Part of those plans included enlisting the help of Otar, which was actually a very risky gamble in and of itself. Reason being that if she shared her plan and Otar disagreed with it, then he would likely kill her right there just for plotting against Freya. Luckily, Otar shared similar thoughts to her, as he too sensed what Freya's true wish was. He could see the path Freya was trying to wander down and knew very well what actions would best serve her interests in the truest sense. He wasn't so bold as to act on them without direct orders though, but with Horn now presenting an opportunity to do so with minimal involvement, well, that was an opportunity he knew he couldn't pass up on. You see, he knew Horn's existence was a special one. He knew she was the only person who could possibly change Freya's future drastically. This was what Horn was banking on Otar realizing, hoping it would help him come to the same conclusion that she came to. So, with his loyalty also extending beyond just the surface level of what Freya wanted, Otar surprisingly agreed to assist Horn, only if for an instant. She never said anything about trying to murder Belle, but by at least framing it in a sense that she could win Belle's heart over Freya, that was enough to gain his assistance. It seems Otar also understands just how detrimental Freya's obsession over Belle is. Horn had also tried to enlist the assistance of Hedin, but it seems that backfired and turned Belle into a much better date than she was counting on. Either way, the entire time Freya was on the date with Belle here, Horn was stuck in this box, forced to feel every emotion that Freya was feeling. There were times she'd get so flustered that even her face would turn red. It was once that night had finished, though, that the cruel nature of love was made abundantly clear to them. Since the object of their love would never reciprocate it, that meant passion and lust were the only ways to maintain his attention. Since that passion and lust was denied by the same pure desire that denied their love too, it left their own emotions completely unanswered. It left them wondering what else could they have done to win Belle's heart here. Simply dismissing their feelings wasn't an option, since for someone so long-lived as Freya, to even come across a choice like this was exceedingly rare. She wasn't a child who could simply laugh off these emotions like they were nothing. No, the compassion overwhelming her was a poison. The relationship she desired was a cross both now had to bear whether they wanted to or not. So, when faced with someone so pure no amount of love, passion, or lust could hinder their desire, what do you do to gain their heart? This was the question Freya couldn't find an answer to, instead leading her to the conclusion love was cruel. And so was Belle for making her feel this way. These were the emotions Horn dealt with that night as well, bringing her into the next day ready to do what needed to be done. So Otar would guide Belle to where she was, but the rest of the Freya Familia would try to stop her. Somehow they'd found out about Horn's plans to kill Belle and were now on a mission to try and stop that. Belle and Horn would luckily get away, but not before first bumping into Hermes and Hestia. To explain what it is that made Syr's visage such a shocking one, it's the fact that no god or goddess can see through her. Normally, the gods can look upon mortals and see who they are, but for Syr, she was an empty space that couldn't be examined at all. As far as any of the deities knew themselves, to them she was an irregular unknown to the mortal realm. That was what made her such an appealing person to spend time with. She was an anomaly no god except for Loki could possibly understand. That's actually why Freya would always have to go to Donatus herself, since if Loki ever saw her while Horn was masquerading as her, then she would instantly see through the illusion and expose her. She was the only one who possibly could, but Freya also had a rule that Horn could never meet Hestia either. It makes this yet another crime added to the list committed in order to achieve her dream. She'd now disobeyed her goddess's direct commands, plotted under the cover of a seemingly fair contract, then acted on that plot to steal away someone considered one of the goddess's favored. They were grave sins from which there was no salvation. It was in these moments while they were running away, though, that for the first time, Horn got to experience Belle's pure heart. His blinding sentiment and unyielding compassion aroused her own soul in a way she never expected it to. Although it was for a very brief moment, this small piece of him he unknowingly shared with her allowed her to finally understand why it was her goddess had fallen for him. In this moment that Belle was hers and hers alone, her heart was being driven absolutely mad. So, after finally experiencing the true love Freya constantly experienced herself, Horn knew more than ever now just how unforgivable Belle's existence was. As much as she was being driven mad by her passion, her hate towards him grew equally stronger. Her loyalty wasn't going to allow any hero to seduce her. To Horn, Freya didn't need a partner dragging her down to the mortal realm. This was the wish Horn so desperately desired, and the actions she took to achieve it were sins she accepted willingly. It may be a direct betrayal to the goddess she swore fealty to, but the end result was one she truly believed would be the best for her. As the only one who could understand the depths of Freya's heart, she alone could foresee what it was that was happening to her. That's why Horn did what she did, since the path Freya was on would undoubtedly lead to her corruption and fall. Unfortunately, Horn's plan would fall just short itself, not because of her or the Freya Familia's intervention, but rather because Belle saw right through her. From the very beginning, Belle knew that this wasn't Syr. Though it was very brief, he had picked up on her murderous intent the moment the two locked eyes together. This was why Horn also believed Freya knew what she was doing too, since if even Belle can sense her true intentions, then there was no way her goddess couldn't either. That being the case, it was likely she accepted the game just so that she could test Belle. It was a revelation that made Horn feel like nothing but a clown dancing for Freya's amusement. Even so, she had no regrets trying to do what she thought was best. Freya may be blinded by her love for Belle, but as an outsider with a very clear look at what's happening inside, Horn knew nothing Freya could do would change anything. It didn't matter how maddening her desire for him was, Belle's steadfast feelings would never be hindered by anyone. So, though Horn wasn't able to change Freya herself, she could at least be satisfied knowing her goal would be achieved anyway. It was just gonna happen at the hands of Belle himself. After her brief yet telling encounter with him, Horn truly believed he would be the one to finally free Freya from the spell that was binding her. Now, the rest was pretty much as we saw. First with Belle rejecting Freya as Syr, then after that, Freya discarding Syr in order to approach things a different way. So, Syr's dead, and now there's only Freya left. A goddess who's willing to do anything to make Belle her own. Discarding Syr had freed Freya of the heavy emotions previously affecting her, and instead replaced it with something far lighter. She had essentially went and made everything simple for herself. From now there was gonna be no more games, but instead the single goal of taking Belle for herself. So yeah, that's the whole story behind Syr, Freya, and Horn. If there was any confusion before, I hope this video cleared things up a bit. Now, before I go, don't forget to check out Succube.shop and secure the new high-quality versions of the Succube shirts. They're only going to be available for 2 weeks or so. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!